Welcome to the Learning Lab class, Google Apps for Organization. My name is Melissa, and I'm one of the Adult and Teen Services librarians at the Arcadia Public Library. In this class series, we're going to be taking a look at 3 Google Apps and learn some of their features that can help you stay organized. In this second video, we're going to be checking out Google's Calendar and explore some tips and tricks to help you get and stay organized. So let's jump in. As we get started, just a general reminder that your Google account and apps are going to look different than mine since we have different content in our accounts, but the navigation and structure should generally be the same. Another quick note, some of the organizational tips and tricks will be available to you using the calendar app on your mobile device, but some of the more advanced settings or tools may only be available in an internet browser. So if you don't see an option in the app, you can head to a computer to accomplish the task. So first, I'm going to head to calendar.google.com in my web browser, and we'll take a look at the organizational features of the Google Calendar. I can also get to Google Calendar if I'm logged into my account by clicking on the Google Apps icon in the upper right-hand side and then going down to Calendar. If you're not logged in, you'll be taken to a landing page where you will enter your username and password to log into your account. If you're on a personal device, it's possible, if not likely, that your login credentials are saved, and heading to calendar.google.com will take you directly to your calendar. So in our last video, we were looking at Gmail, and you can also access your Google Calendar by using the quick links on the right-hand side. So you would just click on the square that is for calendar, and then you would hit the square with the outer arrow to just pop that open into a new tab. So there's a bunch of different ways to get to your Google Calendar. Now that I'm here on my calendar, let's take a brief look at the basic navigation. On the left-hand side, you'll see a small version of the entire month, and you can click on the different days to be taken to that date. So if I just hop back, you'll see I'm now in the week of October 24th, and you can see my calendar from that time. Below that, you have a list of your calendars, and we'll be taking a look at creating and customizing additional calendars in just a minute. Next, in the main portion of the page is where your calendars are based, and what is selected is available on this left-hand side. So I have different calendars and they're different colors, and that is what I'm seeing in the center here. And so if I were to toggle off test, that lunch disappears. If I toggle it back on, it reappears. On the left-hand side, you have some of those quick links again, back to Keep, Tasks, your contacts, and Maps, and then again with the add-ons. Then finally, along the top, you have the button that will take you to today's date. So this will jump you to the calendar straight to today's date if you've navigated away. It will show you the current months that you're looking at. So this week is a split week where it started in one month and then is ending in a different month. So both of them are listed. But if I were to go ahead and future week, it is all November. So it will just show you November and the year, month and year. On the upper right-hand side, you also have a place to search your calendars. A quick link to support, the gear, which is the icon for settings. This drop-down menu allows you to change and customize your view to the length of time that makes sense to you or for whatever tasks you are completing. So the first tip for organization in the Google Calendar is that you have the ability to create and customize multiple calendars. This is a great way to have separate calendars for different areas of your life that you can toggle on and off or even share with others without having everyone see everything on your calendar. Let me show you what I mean. On the left-hand side navigation menu, you see that under the headings My Calendars, I have a whole list of calendars. Reminders and tasks are defaults from Google, as well as the top calendar, which is the main account calendar. Now, book group and test are additional calendars that I've created in this account, and you can toggle calendars on and off by clicking the checkbox next to the name. So for example, if I click off book group and test, I've removed those additional appointments and they are not showing on the screen. If I click them back on, they will reappear in the calendar view in the different colors for the different calendars. You're able to change the color of a particular calendar by clicking on the ... next to the individual calendar and selecting the color from the list below that you want it to appear as. You can also adjust the color of a calendar in the general settings menu, which we'll take a look at in a minute. And if I click on the settings and sharing, that takes me to that full settings menu for that individual calendar. So it's an easier way just to navigate to the settings for an individual calendar. You can also get to settings. You can also get to settings from this upper gear and go to settings. And then you would just navigate down the left-hand side to get to the calendar that you wanted to adjust the settings for. So within the settings menu, this is also the place where you can add an additional calendar. You can not only create your own new calendar by selecting add a calendar, create new calendar, but you can also subscribe to other public calendars or browse for calendars of interest. If I were to select create new calendar, you are prompted to give the calendar a name, an optional description, and you can also set the time zone. I'm going to head back to the calendars that I've already created and take a look at what some of the settings are that are available to me to help me stay organized. So I'm going to head over here to book group. And most of the calendar settings have to do with the sharing of your calendar and event notifications. Google allows you to share your calendar with other people and set their level of permissions for your calendar. So I'm within the calendar settings for the particular calendar book group. And if I scroll down, you have the ability to share with specific people. So if you want someone in your life to have access to one of your calendars, say like a boss, a spouse, a child, you can add their email or name here and set their level of permission. So I've added the other individual or test account that I want to be able to see this calendar. And then you can set the level of permissions for their seeing the calendar or what they can do with the calendar. So you have several options. You can have them see only that you're free or busy. They could see all the event details. They can make changes to the events, or they can also make changes and manage sharing. So this goes from the most restrictive to the least restrictive. So you'll want to set the level of permission that is appropriate for whoever you are sharing your calendar with. In most cases, you'll probably only want to share free or busy or see all event details, but there may be specific scenarios in which you want another person to be able to have access to and modify your calendar, like a spouse or a personal assistant. This form, once completed, will send an email to the person and allow your calendar to be integrated into their Google account and appear on their list of calendars. This can be a great benefit to help teams, individuals, and families get on the same page about scheduling and upcoming events. I'm going to close out of this. And while we're in the settings menu, let's take another quick look at an organizational benefit, which is the daily agenda email. If it would be helpful for you to receive a daily agenda of your upcoming events for the day, you can engage that here by selecting email from this daily agenda notifications option. So if I select email here, what will happen is an email will be sent to me every day at 5 a.m., early enough that most people haven't started their day yet. And the email will show you all of the events that you have scheduled for that day. If you have no events scheduled for a day, it will still generate an email, but no events will be listed in it. So let me head over to my Gmail and I will give you an example of what these emails look like. So over here in my Gmail, I'm going to go ahead and close that. This is an example when I had no events scheduled. You have no events scheduled for today. Here is just the basic email. When I had events scheduled, what it looks like is this. It will list all of them and give you the times, what it is, and it's just a good way to know what your day is going to look like. This feature can be really helpful to get a heads up at the beginning of the day for what you have happening that day. So I've headed back to the calendar settings menu, and this is another area where you can also help yourself stay organized and avoid doing repetitive tasks. You can standardize your notification preferences for events and all-day event notifications. So if you know that you're always going to want to be notified an hour before an event with a pop-up notification or perhaps an email, you can set that up in the settings menu. You always have the option to add individual notifications to an individual event, but this would pre-populate that with standard notifications for you and save you the time and the labor of having to complete that repetitive task. So I'm going to go ahead and add a notification that I want a notification 10 minutes before an event starts. And then maybe I want one also, let's say 5 minutes before an event starts, just for the sake of argument. And then we'll see what that looks like in an individual event in a minute. Now let's look at some of the organizational tips for individual events before we wrap up this video. I'm back at my main calendar page and I've got these 3 calendars of mine turned on. If I click on a day and time that I'd like to create an event for, I get a pop-up box that I fill out to create an event. At the top, you'll want to give it a name and designate whether it is an event or task. The default is event. Below that, you have the date and time and options for adding a location, as well as description or attachments, and what the visibility and notification preferences are. That's a lot that's happening in this tiny pop-up window. So a lot of the time, I like to open the more options to get a full page view of this form. It's just a little bit easier to complete. So I'm going to go ahead and click more options. And it's just a bigger form of that original pop-up. So we're in the larger form of that smaller pop-up. And right up top under the date and times, you have the options to set up a repeating event. The standard rates are daily, weekly, or monthly. And you can also repeat things annually or every weekday. But you can also set up custom repetitions for things that are a little bit more complicated. The custom repeat gives you increased flexibility. So if I go ahead and click on that, you can see that you can set the frequency, what day of the week to repeat on, and then you have also the additional flexibility of never ending that repetition, ending that repetition on a certain date, or after a certain number of occurrences. So if you're taking, say, a class and it meets for 4 weeks, you can do after 4 occurrences. That event will no longer be repeating. This can really be a time saver to keep your calendar and your life organized. The next way that you can help keep yourself organized is by adding the location to an event. And you can do that right here. And this integrates with Google Maps. So instead of having to look elsewhere for the meeting location or address, it can be integrated into the event entry on your calendar. And like I mentioned, it integrates with Google Maps. So if you happen to use that app for navigation, you can click and open the location in the maps right from your calendar. So I'm going to go ahead and add the library address. And it'll be right here in my library event. You can also preview that in Maps if you would like to get a sense of where you're going. It's all just integrated right within the map. It's really handy. Next in the middle, you have the defaults for busy or free and the default visibility. This sets up how other people who have access to your calendar will see individual events on your calendar. So if you share a calendar, your events have the same privacy settings as your calendar in general. If you can change what others see about certain events in this area for individual events. So for instance, if you're generally fine with someone seeing all the details of an event that you share your calendar with, but in this particular case, you'd like it to be private, you can set that visibility here. So you have public or private as the visibility settings, and it's always going to default to whatever the calendar visibility is. If you don't have your calendar shared or this isn't a concern, you don't need to worry about this area. You can just leave it to the defaults. And finally, the last tip is that you can add a description and even attachments to a Google Calendar event. So say you're having a meeting and you want to include the agenda, either typed here in this box or as an attachment, you can do that right here. That way, all the guests, which you can add on the right-hand side here, will have all the needed description and materials for the event in one convenient location, and they won't have to look elsewhere for the materials that they need. In this video, we discussed Google's Calendar and some tips and tricks to help you stay organized using this app. Join us for our next video where we'll be going over tips and tricks for staying organized with Google Keep, which is Google's Notes app. Feel free to reach out to library staff if you have any additional questions.